Chapter 12 of Anna of the Five Towns. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Monique Michener. Anna of the Five Towns by Arnold Bennett. Chapter 12. At the Prairie. She was not to be pardoned. The offense was too monstrous, daring, and final. At the same time, the unappeasable ire of the old man tended to weaken his power over her. All her life she had been terrorized by the fear of a wrath which had never reached the superlative degree until that day. Now that she had seen and felt the limit of his anger, she became aware that she could endure it. The curse was heavy, and perhaps more irksome than heavy, but she survived. She continued to breathe, eat, drink, and sleep. Her father's power stopped short of annihilation. Here, too, was a satisfaction that things could not be worse. And still greater comfort lay in the fact that she had not only accomplished the deliverance, and still greater comfort lay in the fact that she had not only accomplished the deliverance of Willie Price, but had secured absolute secrecy concerning the episode. The next day was Saturday, when after breakfast it was Ephraim's custom to give Anna the weekly sovereign for housekeeping. "Here, Agnes," he said, turning in his armchair to face the child, and drawing a sovereign from his waistcoat pocket, "take charge of this, and mind ye make it go as far as ye can." His tone conveyed a subsidiary message. "I am terribly angry, but I am not angry with you. However, behave yourself." The child mechanically took the coin, scared by this proof of an unprecedented domestic convulsion. Anna, with a tightening of the lips, rose and went into the kitchen. Agnes followed, after a discreet interval, and in silence gave up the sovereign. "What is it all about, Anna?" she ventured to ask that night. "Never mind," said Anna curtly. The question had never needed some courage, for at certain times Agnes would as easily have trifled with her father as with Anna. From that moment, with the passive fatalism characteristic of her years, Agnes's spirits began to rise again to the normal level. She accepted the new situation and fitted herself into it with a child's adaptability. If Anna naturally felt a slight resentment against this too impartial and apparently callous attitude on the part of the child, she never showed it. Nearly a week later, Anna received a postcard from Beatrice announcing her complete recovery and the immediate return of her parents and herself to Bursley. That same afternoon, a cab encumbered with much luggage passed up the street as Anna was fixing clean curtains in her father's bedroom. Beatrice, on the lookout, waved a hand and smiled, and Anna responded to the signals. She was glad now that the Suttons had come back, though for several days she had almost forgotten their existence. On the Saturday afternoon, Miners called. Anna was in the kitchen. She heard him scuffling with Agnes in the lobby, and then talking to her father. 3 times she had seen him since her disgrace, and each time the secret bitterness of her soul, despite conscientious effort to repress it, had marred the meeting. It had been plain, indeed, that she was profoundly disturbed. He had affected at first not to observe the change in her, and she anticipated his questions, hinted briefly that the trouble was with her father, and had no reference to himself, and that she preferred not to discuss it at all. Reassured, and too young in courtship yet to presume on a lover's rights. He respected her wish, and endeavored by every art to restore her to equanimity. This time, as she went to greet him in the parlor, she resolved that he should see no more of the shadow. He noticed instantly the difference in her face. "I've come to take you into Sutton's for tea and for the evening," he said eagerly. "You must come. They are very anxious to see you. I've told your father," he added. Ephraim had vanished into his office. "What did he say, Henry?" she asked timidly. "He said you must please yourself, of course. Come along, love. Mustn't she, Agnes?" Agnes concurred and said that she would get her father's tea and his supper too. "You will come," he urged. She nodded, smiling thoughtfully, and he kissed her for the first time in front of Agnes, who was filled with pride at this proof of their confidence in her. "I'm ready, Henry," Anna said, a quarter of an hour later, and they went across to Sutton's. "Anna, tell me all about it," Beatrice burst out when she and Anna had fled to her bedroom. "I'm so glad. Do you love him really, truly?" "He's dreadfully fond of you. He told me so this morning. We had quite a long chat in the market. I think you're both very lucky, you know." She kissed Anna effusively for the third time. Anna looked at her, smiling but silent. "Well," Beatrice said, "what do you want me to say?" "Oh, you are the funniest girl, Anna, I ever met." "What do you want me to say, indeed?" Beatrice added in a different tone. "Don't imagine this affair was the least bit of a surprise to us. It wasn't. The fact is, Henry oh, well, never mind. Do you know, Mother and Dad used to think there was something between Henry and me, but there wasn't. You know, not really. I tell you that so that you won't be able to say you were kept in the dark. When shall you be married, Anna?" "I haven't the least idea," Anna replied, and began to question Beatrice about her convalescence. "I'm perfectly well," Beatrice said. "It's always the same. If I catch anything, I catch it bad and get it over quickly." "Now, how long are you two chatterboxes going to stay here?" It was Mrs. Sutton who came into the room. "Bee, you've got those sewing meeting letters to write." Anna, but I'm glad of this. You'll make him a good wife. You two'll just suit each other." Anna could not but be impressed by this unaffected joy of her friends in the engagement. Her spirits rose, and once more she saw visions of future happiness. At tea, Alderman Sutton added his felicitations to the rest, with that flattering air of intimate sympathy and comprehension which some middle-aged men can adopt towards young girls. The tea, made specially magnificent in honor of the betrothal, was such a meal as could only have been compassed in Staffordshire or Yorkshire, a high tea of the last richness and excellence, exquisitely gracious to the palate, but ruthless in its demands on the stomach. At one end of the table, which glittered with silver, glass, and Longshaw china, was a fowl which had been boiled for 4 hours; at the other, a hot pork pie, islanded in liquor, which might have satisfied a regiment. Between these two dishes were all the delicacies which differentiate high tea from tea, and on the quality of which the success of the meal really depends. Hot pikelets, hot crumpets, hot toast, sardines with tomatoes, raisin bread, currant bread, seed cake, lettuce, homemade marmalade, and homemade jams. The repast occupied over an hour, and even then not a quarter of the food was consumed. Surrounded by all that good fare and goodwill, with the alderman on her left, Henry on her right, and a bright fire in front of her, Anna quickly caught the gaiety of the others. She forgot everything but the gladness of reunion, the joy of the moment, the luxurious comfort of the house. Conversation was busy with the doings of the Suttons at Port Erin after Anna and Henry had left. A listener would have caught fragments like this. You know such and such a point. No, not there, over the hill. Well, we hired a carriage and drove. The weather was simply, Tom Kelly said he'd never. And that little guard on the railway came all the way down to the steamer. Did you see anything in the signal about the actress being drowned? Oh, it was awfully sad. We saw the corpse just after. Beatrice, will you hush? Wasn't it terrible about Titus Price? Beatrice exclaimed. My, sighed Mrs. Hutton, glancing at Anna. You can never tell what's going to happen next. I'm always afraid to go away for the fear of something happening. A silence followed. When tea was finished, Beatrice was taken away by her mother to write the letters concerning the immediate resumption of sewing meetings, and for a little time Anna was left in the drawing room alone with the two men, who began to talk about the affairs of the Prices. It appeared that Mr. Sutton had been asked to become trustee for the creditors under a deed of arrangement, and that he had hopes of being able to sell the business as a going concern. In the meantime, it would need careful management. Will Willie Price manage it? Anna inquired. The question seemed to divert Henry and the alderman, to afford them a contemptuous and somewhat inimical amusement at the expense of Willie. No, said the alderman, quietly but emphatically. Master William is fairly good on the works, said Henry, but in the office, I imagine, he is worse than useless. Grieved and confused, Anna bent down and moved a hassock in order to hide her face. The attitude of these men to Willie Price, that victim of circumstances and of his own simplicity, wounded Anna inexpressibly. She perceived that they could see in him only a defaulting debtor, that his misfortune made no appeal to their charity. She wondered that men so warm-hearted and kind in some relations could be so hard in others. I had a talk with your father at the creditors' meeting yesterday, said the alderman. You won't lose much. Of course you've got a preferential claim for 6 months' rent. He said this reassuringly, as though it would give satisfaction. Anna did not know what a preferential claim might be, nor was she aware of any creditors' meeting. She wished ardently that she might lose as much as possible, hundreds of pounds. She was relieved when Beatrice swept in, her mother following. Now, your worship, said Beatrice to her father, 7 stamps for these letters, please. Anna glanced up inquiringly on hearing the form of address. You don't mean to say that you don't know that father is going to be mayor this year? Beatrice asked, as if shocked at this ignorance of affairs. Yes, it was all settled rather late, wasn't it, Dad? And the mayor-elect pretends not to care much, but actually he is filled with pride, isn't he, Dad? As for the mayoress, A.B., Mrs. Sutton stopped her, smiling. You'll tumble over that tongue of yours some day. Mother said I wasn't to mention it, said Beatrice, lest you should think we were putting on airs. Nay, not I, Mrs. Sutton protested. I said no such thing. Anna knows us too well for that. But I'm not so set up with this mayor business as some people will think I am. Or as Beatrice is, Miners added. At 8:30, and again at 9, Anna said that she must go home, but the Suttons, now frankly absorbed in the topic of the mayoralty, their secret preoccupation, would not spoil the confidential talk which had ensued by letting the lovers depart. It was nearly 9:30 before Anna and Henry stood on the pavement outside, and Beatrice, after facetious farewells, had shut the door. "Let us just walk round by the Manor Farm," Henry pleaded. "It won't take more than a quarter of an hour or so." She agreed dutifully. The footpath ran at right angles to Trafalgar Road, past a colliery whose engine fires glowed in the dark, moonless autumn night, and then across a field. They stood on a knoll near the old farmstead, the extraordinary and pathetic survival of a vanished agriculture. Immediately in front of them stretched acres of burning ironstone, a vast tremulous carpet of flame woven in red, purple, and strange greens. Beyond were the skeleton-like silhouettes of pit heads and the solid forms of furnace and chimney shaft. In the distance, a canal reflected the gigantic illuminations of Caldon Bar ironworks. It was a scene mysterious and romantic enough to kindle the raptures of love, but Anna felt cold, melancholy, and apprehensive of vague sorrows. "Why am I so?" she asked herself, and tried in vain to shake off the mood. "What will Willie Price do if the business is sold?" she questioned Miners suddenly. "Surely," he said to soothe her, "you aren't still worrying about that misfortune. I wish you had never gone near the inquest. The thing seems to have got on your mind." "Oh, no," she protested with an air of cheerfulness. "But I was just wondering." "Well, Willie will have to do the best he can. Get a place somewhere, I suppose. It won't be much, at the best." Had he guessed what perhaps hung on that answer, Miners might have given it in a tone less callous and perfunctory. Could he have seen the tightening of her lips, he might even afterwards have repaired his error by some voluntary assurance that Willie Price should be watched over with a benevolent eye and protected with a strong arm. But how was he to know that in misprizing Willie Price before her, he was misprizing a child to his mother? He had done something for Willie Price, and considered that he had done enough. His thoughts, moreover, were on other matters. "Do you remember that day we went up to the park?" he murmured fondly. "That Sunday? I have never told you that evening I came out of chapel after the first hymn, when I noticed you weren't there, and walked up past your house. I couldn't help it. Something drew me. I nearly called in to see you, then I thought I had better not." "I saw you," she said calmly. His warmth made her feel sad. "I saw you stop at the gate." "You did? But you weren't at the window." "I saw you through the glass of the front door." Her voice grew fainter and more reluctant. "Then you were watching." In the dark he seized her with such violence and kissed her so vehemently that she was startled out of herself. "Oh, Henry!" she exclaimed. "Call me Harry," he entreated, his arm still round her waist. "I want you to call me Harry. No one else does or ever has done, and no one shall now." "Harry," she deliberately, bracing her mind to a positive determination. She must please him, and she said it again. "Harry, yes. It has a nice sound." Ephraim sat reading the Signal in the parlor when she arrived home at 5 minutes to 10. Imbued then with ideas of duty, submission, and systematic kindliness, she had an impulse to attempt a reconciliation with her father. "Good night, Father," she said. "I hope I've not kept you up." He was deaf. She went to bed resigned, sad but not gloomy. It was not for nothing that during all her life she had been accustomed to infelicity. Experience had taught her this, to be the mistress of herself. She knew that she could face any fact, even the fact of her dispassionate frigidity under Miners's caresses. It was on the firm, almost rapturous resolve to succor Willie Price, if need be, that she fell asleep. The engagement, which had hitherto been kept private, became the theme of universal gossip immediately upon the return of the Suttons from the Isle of Man. 2 words let fall by Beatrice in the St. Luke's covered market on Saturday morning had increased and multiplied till the whole town echoed with the news. Anna's private fortune rose as high as $250,000. As for Henry Miners, it was said that Henry Miners knew what he was about. After all, he was like the rest. Money, money. Of course, it was inconceivable that a fine, prosperous figure of a man, such as Miners, would have made up to her if she had not been simply rolling in money. Well, there was one thing to be said for young Miners. He would put money to good use. You might rely he would not hoard it up same as it had been hoarded up. However, the more saved, the more for young Miners, so he needn't grumble. It was to be hoped he would make her dress herself a bit better, though indeed it hadn't been her fault she went about so shabby. The old skinflint would never allow her a penny of her own, so tongues wagged. The first Sunday was a tiresome ordeal for Anna, both at school and at chapel. "Well, I never!" seemed to be written like a note of exclamation on every brow. The monotony of the congratulations fatigued her as much as her involuntary efforts to grasp what each speaker had left unsaid of innuendo, malice, envy, or sycophancy. Even the people in the shops during the next few days could not serve her without direct and curious reference to her private matters. The general opinion that she was a cold and bloodless creature was strengthened by her attitude at this period. But the apathy which she displayed was neither affected nor due to an excessive diffidence. As she seemed, so she felt. She often wondered what would have happened to her if that vague something between Henry and Beatrice, to which Beatrice had confessed, had ever taken definite shape. "Hancock came back from Lancashire last night," said Miners, when he arrived at Manor Terrace on the next Saturday afternoon. Ephraim was in the room, and Henry, evidently joyous and triumphant, addressed both him and Anna. "Is Hancock the commercial traveler?" Anna asked. She knew that Hancock was the commercial traveler, but she experienced a nervous compulsion to make idle remarks in order to hide the breach of intercourse between her father and herself. "Yes," said Miners, "he had a magnificent journey." "How much?" asked the miser. Henry named the amount of orders taken in a fortnight's journey. "Humph!" the miser ejaculated. "That's better than a bat in the eye with a burnt stick." From him, this was the superlative of praise. "You're making good money at any rate." "We are," said Miners. "That reminds me," Ephraim remarked gruffly. "When dost thou think of getting wed?" "I'm not much for long engagements, and so I tell ye." He threw a cold glance sideways at Anna. The idea penetrated her heart like a stab. "He wants to get me out of the house." "Well," said Miners, surprised at the question and the tone, and looking at Anna as if for an explanation, "I had scarcely thought of that. What does Anna say?" "I don't know," she murmured, and then more bravely, in a louder voice, and with a smile. "The sooner the better," she thought in her bitter and painful resentment. "If he wants me to go, go I will." Henry tactfully passed on to another phase of the subject. "I met Mr. Sutton yesterday, and he was telling me of Price's house up at Toft End. It belonged to Mr. Price, but of course it was mortgaged up to the hilt. The mortgagees have taken possession, and Mr. Sutton said it would be to let cheap at Christmas. Of course Willie and old Sarah Vaudrey, the housekeeper, would clear out. I was thinking it might do for us. It's not a bad sort of house, or rather, it won't be when it's repaired. What will they ask for it? Ephraim inquired. 25 or 28. It's a nice large house, 4 bedrooms, and a very good garden. 4 bedrooms, the miser exclaimed. What dost want with 4 bedrooms? You'd have for keep a servant. Naturally we should keep a servant, Miner said with calm politeness. You could get one of them new houses up by the park for £15, as would do you well enough. The miser protested against these dreams of extravagance. I don't care for that part of the town, said Miners. It's too new for my taste. After tea, when Henry and Anna went out for their Saturday evening stroll, Miners suddenly suggested, why not go up and look through that house of prices? Won't it seem like turning them out if we happen to take it? She asked. Turning them out? Willie is bound to leave it. What use it to him? Besides, it's in the hands of the mortgagees now. Why shouldn't we take it just as well as anybody else, if it suits us? Anna had no reply, and she surrendered herself placidly enough to his will. Nevertheless, she could not entirely banish a misgiving that Willie Price was again to be victimized. Infinitely more disturbing than this illogical sensation, however, was the instinctive and sure knowledge, revealed in a flash, that her father wished to be rid of her. So implacable, then, was his animosity against her. Never, never had she been so deeply hurt. The wound, in fact, was so severe that at first she felt only a numbness that reduced everything to unimportance, robbing her of volition. She walked up to Toft End as if walking in her sleep. Price's house, sometimes called Priory House, in accordance with the legend that a priory had once occupied the site, stood in the middle of the mean and struggling suburb of Toft End, which was flung up the hillside like a ragged scarf. Built of red brick, towards the end of the 18th century, double-fronted with small, evenly disposed windows, and a chimney stack at either side, it looked westward over the town smoke towards a horizon of hills. It had a long, narrow garden, which ran parallel with the road. Behind it, adjoining, was a small, disused pot-works, already advanced in decay. On the north side, and enclosed by a brick wall, which surrounded also the garden, was a small orchard of sterile and withered fruit trees. In parts the wall had crumbled under the assaults of generations of boys, and from the orchard through the gaps could be seen an expanse of gray-green field with a few abandoned pit shafts scattered over it. These shafts, imperfectly protected by ruinous masonry, presented an appearance strangely sinister and forlorn, raising visions in the mind of dark and mysterious depths, peopled with miserable ghosts of those who had toiled there in the days when to be a miner was to be a slave. The whole place, house and garden, looked ashamed and sad, with a shabby mournfulness acquired gradually from its inmates during many years, but nevertheless the house was substantial, and the air on that height fresh and pure. Miners rang in vain at the front door, and then they walked round the house to the orchard, and discovered Sarah Vaudrey taking in clothes from a line, a diminutive and wasted figure with scanty gray hair, a tiny face permanently soured, and bony hands contorted by rheumatism. "My rheumatism's that bad," she said in response to greetings. I can scarce move about, and this house is a regular barracks to keep clean. No, Willie's not in. He's at the works as usual. Saturday like any other day. I'm by myself here all day and every day. But I reckon us'll be fittin' soon. And me lived here 28 years. Praise God, there's a mansion up there for me at last, and not sorry shall I be when he calls. It must be very lonely for you, Miss Vawdrey, said Miners. He knew exactly how to speak to this dame who lived her life like a fly between two panes of glass, and who could find room in her head for only three ideas, namely, that God and herself were on terms of intimacy, that she was and had always been indispensable to the Price family, and that her social status was far above that of a servant. It's a pity you never married, Miners added. Me? Marry? What would they have done without me? No, I'm no for marriage and never was. I'd be shamed to be like some of them spinsters down at chapel, always hang around chapel yard on the off chance of a service, to catch that there young Mr. Sergeant, the new minister. It's a sign of a hard winter, Miss Tarrant. When the hay runs after the horse, that's what I say. Miss Tellwright and myself are in search of a house, Miners gently interrupted the flow and gave her a peculiar glance which she appreciated. We heard you and Willie were going to leave here, and so we came up just to look over the place, if it's quite convenient to you. I understand ye, she said. Come in, but ye mun take things as ye find 'em, Miss Tarrant. Dismal and unkempt, the interior of the house matched the exterior. The carpets were threadbare, the discolored wallpapers hung loose on the walls, the ceilings were almost black, the paint had nearly been rubbed away from the woodwork, the exhausted furniture looked as if it would fall to pieces in despair if compelled to face the threatened ordeal of an auction sale. But to Anna the rooms were surprisingly large, and there seemed so many of them. It was as if she were exploring an immense abode, like a castle, with odd chambers continually showing themselves in unexpected places. The upper story was even less inviting than the ground floor, barer, more chill, utterly comfortless. This is the best bedroom, said Miss Vawdrey, and a rare big room, too. It's not used now. He slept here, Willie sleeps at back. A very nice room, Miners agreed blandly, and measured it, as he had done all the others, with a 2 foot, entered the figures in his pocketbook. Anna's eyes wandered uneasily across the room, with its dismantled bed and decrepit mahogany suite. I'm glad he hanged himself at the works, and not here, she thought. Then she looked out at the window. What a splendid view, she remarked to Miners. She saw that he had taken a fancy to the house. The sagacious fellow esteemed it, not as it was, but as it would be. Repapered, repainted, refurnished, the outer walls pointed, the garden stocked, everything cleansed, brightened, renewed. And there was indeed much to be said for his fancy. The house was large, with plenty of ground. The boundary wall secured that privacy which young husbands and young wives instinctively demand. The outlook was unlimited, the air the purest in the 5 towns, and the rent was low, because the great majority of those who could afford such a house would never deign to exist in a quarter so poverty-stricken and unfashionable. After leaving the house, they continued their walk up the hill, and then turned off to the left on the high road from Hanbridge to Moorthorne. The venerable but not dignified town lay below them, a huddled medley of brown brick under a thick black cloud of smoke. The gold angel of the town hall gleamed in the evening light, and the dark, squat tower of the parish church, sole relic of the past, stood out grim and obdurate amid the featureless buildings which surrounded it. To the north and east, miles of moorland, defaced by collieries and murky hamlets, ran to the horizon. Across the great field at their feet, a figure slouched along past the abandoned pit shafts. They both recognized the man. "There's Willie Price going home," said Miners. "He looks tired," she said. She was relieved that they had not met him at the house. "I say," Miners began earnestly, after a pause, "why shouldn't we get married soon, since the old gentleman seems rather to expect it? He's been rather awkward lately, hasn't he?" This was the only reference made by Miners to her father's temper. She nodded. "How soon?" she asked. "Well, I was just thinking, suppose, for the sake of argument, this house turns out all right. I couldn't get it thoroughly done up much before the middle of January. Couldn't begin till these people had moved. Suppose we said early in February." "Yes." "Could you be ready by that time?" "Oh, yes," she answered. "I could be ready." "Well, why shouldn't we fix February then?" "There's the question of Agnes," she said. "Yes, and there will always be the question of Agnes. Your father will have to get a housekeeper. You and I will be able to see after little Agnes, never fear." So with tenderness in his voice, he reassured her on that point. "Why not February?" she reflected. "Why not tomorrow, as father wants me out of the house?" It was agreed. "I've taken the Priory, subject to your approval," Henry said, less than a fortnight later. From that time he invariably referred to the place as the Prairie. It was on the very night after this eager announcement that the approaching tragedy came one step nearer. Beatrice, in a modest evening dress, with a white cloak, excited, hurried, and important, ran in to speak to Anna. The carriage was waiting outside. She and her father and mother had to attend a very important dinner at the mayor's house at Hillport, in connection with Mr. Sutton's impending mayoralty. Old Sarah Vawdrey had just sent down a girl to say that she was unwell, and would be grateful if Mrs. Sutton or Beatrice would visit her. It was a most unreasonable time for such a summons, but Sarah was a fidgety old crotchet, and knew how frightfully good-natured Mrs. Sutton was. Would Anna mind going up to Toft End? And would Anna come out to the carriage and personally assure Mrs. Sutton that old Sarah should be attended to? If not, Beatrice was afraid her mother would take it into her head to do something stupid. "It's very good of you, Anna," said Mrs. Sutton, when Anna went outside with Beatrice. "But I think I'd better go myself. The poor old thing may feel slighted if I don't, and Beatrice can well take my place at the fair at Hillport, which I've no mind for." She was already half out of the carriage. "Nothing of the kind," said Anna firmly, pushing her back. "I shall be delighted to go and do what I can." "That's right, Anna," said the alderman from the darkness of the carriage, where his shirt front gleamed. "Bee said you'd go, and we're much obliged to ye." "I expect it will be nothing," said Beatrice, as the vehicle drove off. "Sarah has served mother this trick before now." As Anna opened the garden gate of the Priory, she discerned a figure amid the rank bushes, which had been allowed to grow till they almost met across the narrow path leading to the front door of the house. It was a thick and mysterious night, such a night as death chooses, and Anna jumped in vague terror at the apparition. "Who's there?" said a voice sharply. "It's me," said Anna. "Miss Vawdrey sent down to ask Mrs. Sutton to come up and see her, but Mrs. Sutton had an engagement, so I came instead." The figure moved forward. It was Willie Price. He peered into her face, and she could see the mortal pallor of his cheeks. "Oh," he exclaimed, "it's Miss Tellwright, is it? Will ye come in, Miss Tellwright?" She followed him with beating heart, alarmed, apprehensive. The front door stood wide open, and at the far end of the gloomy passage a faint light shone from the open door of the kitchen. "This way," he said. In the large, bare, stone-floored kitchen, Sarah Vawdrey sat limp and with closed eyes in an old rocking chair close to the fireless range. The window, which gave on to the street, was open. Through that window, Sarah, in her extremity, had called the child who ran down to Mrs. Sutton's. On the deal table were a dirty cup and saucer, a teapot, bread, butter, and a lighted candle, sole illumination of the chamber. "I come home, and I find this," he said. Daunted for a moment by the scene of misery, Anna could say nothing. "I find this," he repeated, as if accusing God of spitefulness, and he lifted the candle to show the apparently insensible form of the woman. Sarah's wrinkled and seamed face had the flush of fever, and the features were drawn into the expression of a terrible anxiety. Her hands hung loose. She breathed like a dog after a run. "I wanted her to have the doctor yesterday," he said, "but she wouldn't. Ever since you and Mr. Miners called, she's been cleaning the house down. She said you'd happen be coming again soon, and the place wasn't fit to be seen. No use me arguing with her." "You had better run for a doctor," Anna said. "I was just going off when you came. She's been complaining more of her rheumatism and pain in her hips lately. Go now, fetch Mr. McPherson, and call at our house and say I shall stay here all night. Wait a moment." Seeing that he was exhausted from lack of food, she cut a thick piece of bread and butter. "Eat this as you go," she said. "I can't eat. It'll choke me." "Let it choke you," she said. "You've got to swallow it." Child of 100 sorrows, he must be treated as a child. As soon as Willie was gone, she took off her hat and jacket and lit a lamp. There was no gas in the kitchen. "What's that like?" the old woman asked peevishly, rousing herself and sitting up. "I doubt I'll be late with Willie's tea. Miss Terrick? What's amiss?" "You're not quite well, Miss Vawdrey," Anna answered. "If you'll show me your room, I'll see you into bed." Without giving her a moment for hesitation, Anna seized the feeble creature under the arms, and so coaxing, supporting, carrying, got her to bed. At length she lay on the narrow mattress, panting, exhausted. It was Sarah's final effort. Anna lit fires in the kitchen and in the bedroom, and when Willie returned with Dr. McPherson, water was boiling and tea made. "You'd better get a woman in," said the doctor curtly, in the kitchen, when he had finished his examination of Sarah. "Some neighbor for tonight, and I'll send a nurse up from the cottage hospital early tomorrow morning. Not that it will be the least use. She must have been dying for the last 2 days at least. She's got pericarditis and pleurisy. She's breathing, I don't know how many to the minute, and her temperature is just about as high as it can be. It all follows from rheumatism, and then taking cold. Gross carelessness and neglect all through. I've no patience with such work." He turned angrily to Willie. "I don't know what on earth you were thinking of, Mr. Price, not to send for me earlier." Willie, abashed and guilty, found nothing to say. His eye had the meek wistfulness of Holman Hunt's scapegoat. "Mr. Price wanted her to have the doctor," said Anna, defending him with warmth, "but she wouldn't. He is out at the works all day till late at night. How was he to know how she was? She could walk about." The tall doctor glanced at Anna in surprise, and at once modified his tone. "Yes," he said, "that's the curious thing. It passes me how she managed to get about, but there is no knowing what an obstinate woman won't force herself to do. I'll send the medicine up tonight, and come along myself with the nurse early tomorrow. Meantime, Keep careful to my instructions. That night remains forever fixed in Anna's memory, the grim rooms echoing and shadowy, the countless journeys up and down dark stairs and passages, Willie sitting always immovable in the kitchen, idle because there was nothing for him to do, Sarah incessantly panting on the truckle bed, the hired woman from up the street, buxom, kindly, useful, but fatuous in the endless monotony of her commiserations. Toward morning, Sarah Vaudrey gave sign of a desire to talk. I fought the fight, she murmured to Anna, who alone was in the bedroom with her. I fought the fight. I've kept the faith. In that box there you'll see a purse. There's 17 pounds 6 in it. That will pay for the funeral, and Willie must have what's over. There would have been more for the lad, but he never paid me no wages this 2 years past. I never troubled him. Don't tell Willie that, Anna said impetuously. Bless you, no, said the dying drudge, and then seemed to doze. Anna went to the kitchen and sent the woman upstairs. How is she? Asked Willie without stirring. Anna shook her head. Neither her nor me will be here much longer, I'm thinking, he said, smiling warily. What? She exclaimed, startled. Mr. Sutton has arranged to sell our business as a going concern. Some people at Turnhill are buying it. I shall go to Australia. There's no room for me here. The creditors have promised to allow me 25 pounds, and I can get an assisted passage. Bursley'll know me no more. But I shall always remember you and what you've done. She longed to kneel at his feet and to comfort him and to cry. It is I who have ruined you, driven your father to cheating his servant, to crime, to suicide, driven you to forgery, and turned you out of your house, which your old servant killed herself in making clean for me. I have wronged you, and I love you like a mother because I have wronged you, and because I saved you from prison. But she said nothing except, some of us will miss you. The next day, Sarah Vaudrey died. She who had never lived save in the fetters of slavery and fanaticism. After 50 years of ceaseless labor, she had gained the affection of one person and enough money to pay for her own funeral. Willie Price took a cheap lodging with the woman who had been called in on the night of Sarah's collapse. Before Christmas he was to sail to Melbourne. The Priory, deserted, gave up its rickety furniture to a van from Hanbridge, where, in an auction room, the frail sticks lost their identity in a medley of other sticks, and ceased to be. Then the bricklayer, the plasterer, the painter, and the paper hanger came to the Priory and whistled and sang in it. End of chapter 12. Recording by Monique Mitchner, Randallstown, Maryland. Chapter 13 of Anna of the Five Towns. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Monique Mitchner. Anna of the Five Towns by Arnold Bennett. Chapter 13, The Bazaar. The Wesleyan Bazaar, the greatest undertaking of its kind ever known in Bursley, gradually became a cloud which filled the entire social horizon. Mrs. Sutton, organizer of the Sunday school stall, pressed all her friends into the service, and a fortnight after the death of Sarah Vaudrey, Anna and even Agnes gave much of their spare time to the work, which was carried on under pressure, increasing daily as the final moments approached. This was well for Anna, in that it diverted her thoughts by keeping her energies fully engaged. One morning, however, it occurred to Mrs. Sutton to reflect that Anna, at such a period of life, should be otherwise employed. Anna had called at the Suttons to deliver some finished garments. "My dear," she said, "I am very much obliged to you for all this industry, but I've been thinking that as you are to be married in February, you ought to be preparing your things." "My things," Anna repeated idly, and then she remembered Miners's phrase on the hill, "Can you be ready by that time?" "Yes," said Mrs. Sutton, "but possibly you've been getting forward with them on the quiet." "Tell me," said Anna, with an air of interest. "I've meant to ask you before. Is it the bride's place to provide all the house linen and that sort of thing?" "It was in my day, but those things alter so. The bride took all the house linen to her husband, and as many clothes for herself as would last a year. That was the rule. We used to stitch everything at home in those days. Everything. And we had what we called a bottom drawer to store them in. As soon as a girl passed her 15th birthday, she began to sew for the bottom drawer. But all those things changed so. I dare say it's different now." "How much will it cost to buy everything, do you think?" Anna asked. Just then Beatrice entered the room. "Beatrice, Anna is inquiring how much it will cost to buy her trousseau and the house linen. What do you say?" "Oh," Beatrice replied without any hesitation, "a couple of hundred at least." Mrs. Sutton, reading Anna's face, smiled reassuringly. "Nonsense, Bee. I dare say you could do it on 100 with care, Anna." "Why should Anna want to do it with care?" Beatrice asked curtly. Anna went straight across the road to her father and asked him for 100 pounds of her own money. She had not spoken to him, save under necessity, since the evening spent at the Suttons. "What's afoot now?" he questioned savagely. "I must buy things for the wedding clothes and things, father." "Aye, clothes, clothes. What clothes dost want? A few pounds will cover them. There'll be all the linen for the house. Linen for— It's none thy place for buy that." "Yes, father, it is." "I say it isna. But I've asked Mrs. Sutton, and she says it is. What business an ye for go blabbing thy affairs all over Bosley? I say isna thy place for buy linen, and that be sufficient. Go and get dinner. It's nigh on 12 now." That evening, when Agnes had gone to bed, she resumed the struggle. "Father, I must have that 100 pounds. I really must. I mean it." "Thou means it, what?" "I mean I must have 100 pounds. I'd advise thee to take care of thy tongue, my lass. Thou means it." "But you needn't give it me all at once," she pursued. He gazed at her glowering. "I shanna give it thee. It's Henry's place for buy thy house linen." "Father, it isn't." Her voice broke, but only for an instant. "I'm asking you for my own money. You seem to want to make me miserable just before my wedding. I wish to God thou'dst never seen Henry Miners. It's given thee pride and made thee undutiful. I'm only asking you for my own money." Her calm insistence maddened him. Jumping up from his chair, he stamped out of the room, and she heard him strike a match in his office. Presently he returned and threw angrily onto the table in front of her a checkbook and passbook. The deposit book she had always kept herself for convenience of paying into the bank. "Here," he said scornfully, "take thy tracts and ne'er speak to me again. I wash my hands of ye. Take 'em, and do what ye na mind. Chuck thy money into the cut for aught I care." The next evening Henry came up. She observed that his face had a grave look, but intent on her own difficulties, she did not remark on it, and proceeded at once to do what she resolved to do. It was a cold night in November, yet the miser, wrathfully sullen, chose to sit in his office without a fire. Agnes was working sums in the kitchen. "Henry," Anna began, "I've had a difficulty with father, and I must tell you." "Not about the wedding, I hope," he said. "It was about money. Of course, Henry, I can't get married without a lot of money." "Why not?" he inquired. "I've my own things to get," she said, "and I've all the house linen to buy." "Oh, you buy the house linen, do you?" She saw that he was relieved by that information. "Of course. Well, I told father I must have £100, and he wouldn't give it to me. And when I stuck to him, he got angry. You know he can't bear to see money spent. And at last he got a little savage and gave me my bank books and said he'd have nothing more to do with my money." Henry's face broke into a laugh, and Anna was obliged to smile. "Capital," he said. "Couldn't be better." "I want you to tell me how much I've got in the bank," she said. "I only know I'm always paying in odd checks." He examined the 3 books. "A very tidy bit," he said, "something over £250. So you can draw checks at your ease." "Draw me a check for £20, she said, "and then," while he wrote, "Henry, after we're married, I shall want you to take charge of all this." "Yes, of course I will do that, dear, but your money will be yours. There ought to be a settlement on you. Still, if your father says nothing, it is not for me to say anything." "Father will say nothing now," she said. "You've never shown any interest in it, Henry. But as we're talking of money, I may as well tell you that father says I'm worth £50,000. The man of business was astonished and enraptured beyond measure. His countenance shone with delight. "Surely not," he protested formally. "That's what father told me, and he made me read a list of shares and so on." "We will go slow to begin with," said Miner solemnly. He had not expected more than £15,000 or £20,000, and even this sum had dazzled his imagination. He was glad that he had only taken the house at Toft End on a yearly tenancy. He now saw himself the dominant figure in all of the 5 towns. Later in the evening he disclosed, perfunctorily, the matter which had been a serious weight on his mind when he entered the house, but which this revelation of vast wealth had diminished to a trifle. Titus Price had been the treasurer of the building fund which the bazaar was designed to assist. Miners had assumed the position of the dead man, and that day, in going through the accounts, he had discovered that a sum of £50 was missing. "It's a dreadful thing for Willie if it gets about," he said. "A tale of that sort would follow him to Australia." "Oh, Henry, it is," she exclaimed, sorrow-stricken. "But we mustn't let it get about. Let us pay the money ourselves. You must enter it in the books and say nothing." "That is impossible," he said firmly. "I can't alter the accounts. At least I can't alter the bank book and the vouchers. The auditor would detect it in a minute. Besides, I should not be doing my duty if I kept a thing like this from the superintendent minister. He, at any rate, must know, and perhaps the stewards. But you can urge them to say nothing. Tell them that you will make it good. I will write a check at once." "I had meant to find the 50 myself," he said. It was a bedlam sum to him now. "Let me pay half, then," she asked. "If you like," he urged, smiling faintly at her eagerness. "The thing is bound to be kept quiet. It would create such a frightful scandal. Poor old chap," he added carelessly. "I suppose he was hard run, and meant to put it back, as they all do mean." But it was useless for Miners to affect depression of spirits, or mournful sympathy with the errors of a dead sinner. The 50,000 danced a jig in his brain that night. Anna was absorbed in contemplating the misfortune of Willie Price. She prayed wildly that he might never learn the full depth of his father's fall. The miserable robbery of Sarah's wages was buried forevermore, and this new delinquency, which all would regard as flagrant sacrilege, must be buried also. A soul less loyal than Anna's might have feared that Willie, a self-convicted forger, had been a party to the embezzlement, but Anna knew that it could not be so. It was characteristic of Miners's cautious prudence that, the first intoxication having passed, he made no further reference of any kind to Anna's fortune. The arrangements for their married life were planned on a scale which ignored the 50,000 pounds. For both their sakes, he wished to avoid all friction with the miser, at any rate, until his status as Anna's husband would enable him to enforce her rights, if that should be necessary, with dignity and effectiveness. He did not precisely anticipate trouble, but the fact had not escaped him that Ephraim still held the whole of Anna's securities. He was in no hurry to enlarge his borders. He knew that there were 24 hours in every day, 365 days in every year, and 30 good years in life still left to him, and therefore that there would be ample time after the wedding for the execution of his purposes in regard to that 50,000 pounds. Meanwhile, he told Anna that he had set aside 200 pounds for the purchase of furniture for the Priory, a modest sum, but he judged it sufficient. His method was to buy a piece at a time, always second-hand, but always good. The bargain hunt was up, and Anna soon yielded to its mild satisfactions. In the matter of her trousseau and the house linen, Anna, having obtained the needed money at so dear a cost, found yet another obstacle in the eminent bazaar which occupied Mrs. Sutton and Beatrice so completely that they could not contrive any opportunity to assist her in shopping. It was decided between them that every article should be bought ready-made and seamed, and that the first week of the new year, if indeed Mrs. Sutton survived the bazaar, should be entirely and absolutely devoted to Anna's business. At nights, when she had leisure to think, Anna was astonished how during the day she had forgotten her preoccupations in the activities precedent to the bazaar, or in choosing furniture with miners. But she never slept without thinking of Willie Price, and hoping that no further disaster might overtake him. The incident of the embezzled 50 pounds had been closed, and she had given a check for 25 pounds to miners. He had acquainted the minister with the facts, and Mr. Banks had decided that the 2 circuit stewards must be informed. Beyond these, the scandalous secret was not to go. But Anna wondered whether a secret shared by 5 persons could long remain a secret. The bazaar was a triumphant and unparalleled success, and of the 7 stalls, the Sunday school stall stood first each night in the nightly returns. The scene in the town hall, on the 4th and final night, a Saturday, was as delirious and gay as a carnival. 420 pounds had been raised up to tea time, and it was the impassioned desire of everyone to achieve 500. The price of admission had been reduced to 3d, in order that the artisan might enter and spend his wages in an excellent cause. The 7 stalls, ranged round the room like so many bowers of beauty, draped and frilled and floriated, and still laden with countless articles of use and ornament, were continually reinforced with purchasers by emissaries canvassing the crowd which filled the middle of the paper-strewn floor. The horse was not only taken to the water, but compelled to drink, and many a man who, outside, would have laughed at the risk of being robbed, was robbed openly, shamelessly, under the gaze of ministers and class leaders. Bouquets were sold at a shilling each, and at the refreshment stall a glass of milk cost 6 pence. The noise rivaled that of a fair. There was no quiet anywhere, save in the farthest recess of each stall, where the lady in supreme charge of it, like a spider in the middle of its web, watched customers and cash box with equal cupidity. Mrs. Sutton, at 7 o'clock, had not returned from tea, and Anna and Beatrice, who managed the Sunday school stall in her absence, feared that she had at last succumbed under the strain, but shortly afterwards she hurried back breathless to her place. "See that, Anna? It will be reckoned in our returns," she said, exhibiting a piece of paper. It was Ephraim's check for £25 promised months ago, but on a condition which has not been fulfilled. She has the secret of persuading him, thought Anna. Why have I never found it? Then Agnes, in a new white frock, came up with 3 shillings, proceeds of bouquets. "But you must take that to the flower stall, my pet," said Mrs. Sutton. "Can't I give it to you?" the child pleaded. "I want your stall to be the best." Miners arrived next, with something concealed in tissue paper. He removed the paper and showed, in a frame of crimson plush, a common white plate decorated with a simple band and line, and a monogram in the center, A.T. Anna blushed, recognizing the plate which she had painted that afternoon in July at Miners' Works. "Can you sell this?" Miners asked Mrs. Sutton. "I'll try to," said Mrs. Sutton doubtfully, not in the secret. "What's it meant for?" "Try to sell it to me," said Miners. "Well," she laughed, "what will you give?" "A couple of sovereigns." "Make it guineas." He paid the money and requested Anna to keep the plate for him. At 9 o'clock it was announced that, though raffling was forbidden, the bazaar would be enlivened by an auction. A licensed auctioneer was brought, and the sale commenced. The auctioneer, however, failed to attune himself to the wild spirit of the hour, and his professional efforts would have resulted in a fiasco had not Miners, perceiving the danger, leaped to the platform and masterfully assumed the hammer. Miners surpassed himself in the kind of wit that amuses an excited crowd, and the auction soon monopolized the attention of the room. It was always afterwards remembered as the crowning success of the bazaar. The incredible man took £10 in 20 minutes. During this episode, Anna, who had been left alone in the stall, first noticed Willie Price in the room. His ship sailed on the Monday, but steerage passengers had to be aboard on Sunday, and he was saying goodbye to a few acquaintances. He seemed quite cheerful as he walked about with his hands in his pockets, chatting with this one and that. It was the false and hysterical gaiety that precedes a final separation. As soon as he saw Anna, he came towards her. "Well, goodbye, Miss Tellwright," he said jauntily. "I leave for Liverpool tomorrow morning. Wish me luck." Nothing more, no word, no accent, to recall the terrible but sublime past. "I do," she answered. They shook hands, others approaching. He drifted away. Her glance followed him like a beneficent influence. For 3 days she had carried in her pocket an envelope containing a banknote for £100, intending by some device to force it on him as a parting gift. Now the last chance was lost, and she had not even attempted this difficult feat of charity. Such futility, she reflected, self-scorning, was of a piece with her life. "He hasn't really gone. He hasn't really gone," she kept repeating, and yet knew well that he had gone. "Do you know what they are saying, Anna?" said Beatrice, when after 11 o'clock the bazaar was closed to the public, and the stall holders and their assistants were preparing to depart, their movements hastened by the stern aspect of the town hall keeper. "No, what?" said Anna, and in the same moment guessed. "They say old Titus Price embezzled £50 from the building fund, and Henry made it up privately, so that there shouldn't be a scandal. Just fancy. Do you believe it?" The secret was abroad. She looked round the room and saw it in every face. "Who says?" Anna demanded fiercely. "It's all over the place. Miss Dickinson told me." "You will be glad to know, ladies," Miner's voice sang out from the platform, "that the total proceeds, so far as we can calculate them now, exceed £525. There was clapping of hands, which died out suddenly. "Now, Agnes," Anna called, "come along, quick. You're as white as a sheet. Good night, Mrs. Sutton. Good night, Bee." Miners was still occupied on the platform. The town hall keeper extinguished some of the lights. The bazaar was over. End of chapter 13. Recording by Monique Mitchener, Randallstown, Maryland. Chapter 14 of Anna of the Five Towns. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Monique Mitchener. Anna of the Five Towns by Arnold Bennett. Chapter 14. End of A Simple Soul. The next morning at 7:30, Anna was standing in the garden doorway of the Priory. The sun had just risen, the air was cold, roof and pavement were damp, rain had fallen, and more was to fall. A door opened higher up the street, and Willie Price came out, carrying a small bag. He turned to speak to some person within the house, and then stepped forward. As he passed Anna, she sprang forth. "Oh," she cried, "I had just come up here to see if the workmen had locked up properly. We have some of our new furniture in the house, you know." She was as red as the sun over Hillport. He glanced at her. "Have you heard?" he asked simply. "About what?" she whispered. "About my poor old father." "Yes, I was hoping you would never know." By a common impulse, they went into the garden of the Priory, and he shut the door. "Never know," he repeated. "Oh, they took care to tell me." A silence followed. "Is that your luggage?" she inquired. He lifted up the handbag and nodded. "All of it?" "Yes," he said. "I'm only an immigrant." "I've got a note here for you," she said. "I should have posted it to the steamer, but now you can take it yourself. I want you not to read it till you get to Melbourne." "Very well," he said, and crumpled the proffered envelope into his pocket. He was not thinking of the note at all. Presently he asked, "Why didn't you tell me about my father? If I had to hear it, I'd sooner have heard it from you." "You must try to forget it," she urged him. "You are not your father." "I wish I had never been born," he said. "I wish I'd gone to prison." Now was the moment when, if ever, the mother's influence should be exerted. "Be a man," she said softly. "I did the best I could for you. I shall always think of you in Australia getting on." She put a hand on his shoulder. "Yes," she said again passionately, "I shall always remember you. Always." The hand with which he touched her arm shook like an old man's hand. As their eyes met in an intense and painful gaze, to her at least, it was revealed that they were lovers. What he had learned in that instant can only be guessed from his next action. Anna ran out of the garden into the street and so home, never looking behind to see if he pursued his way to the station. Some may argue that Anna, knowing she loved another man, ought not to have married minors, but she did not reason thus. Such a notion never even occurred to her. She had promised to marry minors, and she married him. Nothing else was possible. She who had never failed in duty did not fail then. She who had always submitted and bowed the head, submitted and bowed the head then. She had sucked in with her mother's milk the profound truth that a woman's life is always a renunciation, greater or less. Hers by chance was greater. Facing the future calmly and genially, she took oath with herself to be a good wife to the man whom, with all excellences, she had never loved. Her thoughts often dwelt lovingly on Willie Price, whom she deemed to be pursuing in Australia an honorable and successful career, quickened at the outset by her £100. This vision of him was her stay. But neither she nor anyone in the Five Towns or elsewhere ever heard of Willie Price again, and well might none hear. The abandoned pit shaft does not deliver up its secret, and so the Bank of England is the richer by £100 unclaimed, and the world the poorer by a simple and meek soul stung to revolt only in its last hour. End of chapter 14. Recording by Monique Michener, Randallstown, Maryland. End of Anna of the Five Towns by Arnold Bennett.